The goal and the role of BGP. By the time you're done here, you will understand the multi-carrier situation encountered by many and how BGP can help. Now, when I first kicked off this real-world BGP series, I started off with this slide. I called it the generic view of BGP. It provided an overview, generically speaking, of how we would use BGP to make a block of IP addresses redundant. Well, in this nugget, we're going to get specific to our situation. And when I say our, I'm talking about my company, VIA. We are a managed service provider that provides a number of services hosted from our data center, which happens to be IO Data out here in Phoenix, Arizona, which is actually in the middle of a acquisition or a merger or whatever you want to call it. They will, by the time you hear this, be called Iron Mountain, which is kind of funny. That used to be the company that would drive around in the armored trucks transporting secure tape backups from one location to another. Who knew they grew so big? Now, if you haven't been in a data center before, I want to make sure you know how it works, at least from a high-level view. When you walk in the front door of the data center, you'll typically have some kind of security area and sensor-based entries that check retinal scan and all that kind of stuff into the data center itself. And that data center is usually divided into two major portions, the carrier portion and the customer portion. Customers can't go here, carriers can't go here. So what you'll typically do is buy a rack, meaning a physical place to put your servers. Some data centers will sell you the whole rack, some will sell you some floor space and you install your own rack, some will sell you enclosed rack. I mean, there's all kinds of different varieties, but at the end of the day, you have a place to put servers. Then you buy your power based on how many servers you want to sustain in that data center. Then you buy your connectivity. So over here, you have all the carriers coming into the data center, and they'll typically be coming in through redundant paths. So there's their fiber lines coming into the data center where if a big old tractor takes out this one, they can all come in this way and all that kind of stuff. So they'll come into their racks of equipment over here, and you pay them and run a line to connect to their uplinks. So when VIA started, we didn't have enough money for a whole bunch of carrier connections, so we just got that one line from CenturyLink. That's right, one line, not even redundant. We were a startup. CenturyLink then provided us the public IP addresses we needed to make our servers available to the outside world. So that's what a data center is in 60 seconds or less. Well, as time went on and we grew bigger and bigger, we eventually got a little bit antsy. Single carrier, single connection, single router, single. If something were to happen there, that'd be a major issue. So we introduced Cogent to the mix. They were our second carrier. Now again, this is a single connection because we were being pretty budget conscious. Carrier number 3 that we added to the mix is actually one known as the IO blend. See, what a lot of data centers will do is they'll create their own little cocktail of carriers. So this is IO Data, soon to be called Iron Mountain, and their racks of equipment, and they'll bring in connections from a bunch of different carriers back here in that carrier center and blend them together into a streamlined output. That's pretty cool, because now I can buy one connection that is actually redundant in itself, provided by the data center. It was kind of pricey, but that was our first redundant connection that we bought. Which I just realized I connected to the door. That would come over here to our rack. It would actually look a little bit more like this. Now, all of this, bringing in these multiple carriers, is pretty simple. You pay them money, arrange for a connection to your rack, and boom, you have a new internet connection. Outbound redundancy for your devices are going to be easy. Thanks to NAT, we can masquerade those IP addresses however we want. So if I've got a device here, let's just say it's 10.1.1.5, I can send it out any one of these carriers using NAT, and it can access the internet. Inbound redundancy is where the trouble comes in. These IP addresses are only available through level 3. So let's just say something bad happened to that circuit. And by the way, it did. That's what led us to this addition of multiple carriers. Well, those public IP addresses are only available through level 3, so all of our customers can no longer reach our servers at the data center. And that's simply because that's how the world is arranged. When you set up a connection with a carrier and you're not using BGP, what they will do is create a static route for whatever block of IP addresses they've given you. So literally on their router, they would enter a static saying to reach 63.232.144.0, go to that IP address, which is our router. That router then does whatever it needs to do, typically using NAT, and translates those addresses into our internal servers. Now on the back end, level 3 takes that static route and does something called redistribution, which means they take what is normally a static route that stays local to that router and send it into their BGP processes. Carriers always run BGP. That's how they communicate with other carriers. So they advertise that 63.232 route down to Cox, up to Sprint, over to Cogent, and Cogent advertises it to Sprint, and Sprint advertises it to AT&T, through the thousands and thousands of autonomous systems, which is all the different systems that connect to the internet. This route flows, all stemming from one source, level 3. So if I were to go to this router, or all the way over to Australia at some faraway router, and do a show IP route, all connections would point this way. That's what we want to fix by using BGP. We want to be the autonomous system advertising this network out to the world. That way people will see it coming out of Cogent. They'll see it coming out of level 3. That's what BGP can do for us. Now, I want you to understand, because I know it throws people off when they're brand new to BGP, how IP addresses are delivered. There's 2 different ways. The first way is a completely separate route. That is, we have a point-to-point subnet going between our 2 routers right here. It's a /30, actually 63.156.200.200. This side is .201, this side is .202. So if you look at that static route, it's actually pointed to 63.156.200.202, which is us. Now, this network right here has nothing to do at all with BGP. That just establishes communication between our router, we'll call it the VIA router, and level 3. The public IP address block that we use for our servers is delivered as a completely separate subnet. Now again, as of right now, they're using a static route and saying to reach those IP addresses, go to that 202 address, and it'll get you there. The other way IP addresses can be delivered is as an all-in-one or all-inclusive network. That's what Cogent did for us. Even though we have a single connection here, they gave us a /29 network. Actually, 38.122.88.72. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think we are 73 and they are 78. With a /29, you have 8 total IP addresses, 6 of which are usable, but we're only using 2. So we could, if we wanted to, enable NAT on our router and use 38.122.88.74, we'll just say, and map it to one of our internal servers. But that's not what I'm interested in doing at all. That undermines BGP because that ties me to the block that Cogent gave us. If the Cogent link goes down, then I lose that 74 address. No. What I want to do is enable BGP and advertise this network this way and this way. That way, Cogent sees that 63.232 block and can access our servers that way, and so does level 3. And the goal is so does the rest of the world. Now, I want to put this note in here right now, which is a showstopper for some people. If you're talking about the IPv4 address space, you really need a /24 block, meaning at least 256 addresses, all put together in one contiguous block to advertise. That's because service providers of the world are trying to keep their routing tables small. If they allowed these kind of subnets to be advertised out with BGP, their routing table would be huge because there's thousands and thousands of subnets that we could divide things up to. So most service providers, I'm not saying all, but most of them have a rule and they have filters to say if you advertise anything smaller than a /24, so /25, 26, whatever, they will actually block you and filter those addresses out. So this is the bare minimum block size that we need to run BGP. So our goal in this series, and I want to make sure we're all crystal clear, is to advertise this block of IP address which was given to us by level 3. And when I say given to us, I mean loaned to us as long as we keep paying them for it. And I say that's notable because you can't get your own blocks of addresses like you could in the old day, where you would go to Aaron at the government and register and say, I want this block of IP addresses. We are out of IPv4 addresses. Now, you can still do that with IPv6, but not so much in the IPv4 world. All we can do now is take address blocks from certain carriers and advertise them out other carriers, which does lead to some political situations. And I want to talk to you about that in this series. There's so much I want to say, but for now, you've got the overview. You understand the multi-carrier situation encountered by many and how BGP can help. We'll unpack all of the questions that you will have through this series.